Hello, and thank you for joining me once again for the latest installment of The Vault. I'm Julie Fry, the curator at Stan Hywet Hall and Gardens, and today I'm standing in the billiard room, which we affectionately call FA's man cave. So today we're going to talk about travel. It was something that the Seiberlings loved to do. They did as often as they could, and they traveled pretty far afield from Akron. And there are two instances, though, where their travel plans almost intersected with really significant historic moments. When they were planning Stan Hywet Hall and Gardens, they planned two different trips to England. The first in 1912, when they took their architect Charles Schneider and traveled over to England to tour 20 Tudor manor homes and kind of facilitate finalizing the design of Stan Hywet. And the second one was in the spring of 1915, and this time they traveled with their interior designer Hugo Huber to do some shopping, purchase antiques, and both of those trips they very nearly involved in historic travel moments. The Titanic sank on April 14th, 1912. The Seiberlings were actually scheduled to sail on the return trip. So when the Titanic maiden voyage was leaving England and it was supposed to land in New York, but it unfortunately never made it, the Seiberlings were booked to take the trip from New York back to England. So after the Titanic sank, they had to scramble around and were able to book passage on another boat, and that's what they traveled over with their architect Charles Schneider and their daughter Irene for their first trip to England. The second one in 1915 was scheduled in January, and they actually did take passage on the Lusitania. FA was not a good boat traveler, unfortunately. He very often experienced seasickness, and this was a letter that he wrote to Irene during the trip. Of course, your mother told you of my trying experience coming across on the Lusitania. I saw the interior of the dining room but once, which was on the night we anchored off Liverpool, and in the interim I discovered I'd lost 8 pounds of weight. I'm ashamed to tell you that within 5 days it has been almost completely recovered, as I've been compelled to attend luncheons every day this week, most against my will, this producing the round effect that you are all familiar with. So the Lusitania was bombed in May of 1915, just 4.5 months later. At that point, just after the Seiberlings returned from that England trip in 1915, was when the United States had put an embargo on travel overseas in an attempt to try to protect Americans from these German bombings that were going on. So the Seiberlings were very fortunate. They were able to come back into the country just ahead of this embargo on travel. At the same time, though, they were very invested in trying to complete Stan Hywet. They moved into the house at the end of 1915 in December, so they were trying to get all of the furnishings, a lot of materials that they had purchased, shipped over. They had to purchase large quantities of insurance at that time, and also had to kind of closely monitor as things were landing at port to make sure that everything was accounted for. Fortunately, they never lost any of their decorative items that they purchased or had made overseas, and everything was able to get over here to Akron in time for the family to move into the house in December of 1915. So thank you once again for joining me for this latest edition of The Vault, and I look forward to seeing you again soon.